All right, let's jump into this week's deep dive. We're looking at, well, it's a bit unusual.
Unusual is putting it lightly.
Yeah, it's basically a Japanese guide for civilians on how to survive, like different war scenarios.
A war survival guide, sorta?
Exactly. So get ready for some interesting advice.
It's definitely a unique perspective.
So picture this. You're on a government website, right? Maybe looking for tax info or something.
Sure.
And you stumble on this section that says, how to survive a missile strike using like a sturdy rock.
Sound like a joke, right?
Totally. But no, it's a real guide made by the Japanese Ministry of Internal Affairs.
They seem to have a plan for everything, like from terrorist attacks to full-blown nuclear war.
It's like a 5-course menu of apocalypse scenarios?
Exactly, a very specific menu.
So is Japan just like really into disaster preparedness or something?
Well, they have a history of facing natural disasters, so yeah, being prepared is kind of ingrained in their culture.
Right, but this guide, it goes beyond earthquakes and typhoons, right?
It does. It feels like maybe there's this underlying national anxiety.
Yeah, like a feeling that things could go really wrong on a global scale.
That's one way to put it.
Okay, so a guide for surviving war. It's not exactly a light topic.
No, definitely not. But it's surprisingly detailed, and I'd even say kind of entertaining in a weird way.
Really? Like, how so?
Well, they stress the importance of having good sources of info during emergencies.
Okay, that makes sense. Like what? Don't trust social media for news?
Pretty much. Stick to TV and radio.
Yeah, good luck getting a signal when everyone's panicking.
True, but it's still good advice.
So, besides ditching our smartphones, what other words of wisdom does this guide offer?
It talks about securing your home, having a go bag ready, knowing where to find shelter.
Okay, that sounds kind of practical, actually.
Right, and of course, stocking up on supplies, food, water, first aid kit,
The usual stuff.
and apparently a year's worth of toilet paper.
A year's worth? Seriously, are they expecting a really long bathroom break during a war?
I mean, maybe they know something we don't about the effects of radiation.
Okay, I'm not going to question that one. But let's get back to that war menu you mentioned.
Right, the menu. Well, they've got it all categorized. Small-scale attacks, missile strikes, ground invasions, air raids.
So what do they recommend for, like, appetizers? Small-scale attack.
It seems like you're supposed to, well, basically become a hermit, seal yourself in a room, close all ventilation.
Seriously. No dramatic escapes.
Nope, just staying put, avoiding danger.
Sounds kind of boring.
Well, it's safer than, running into a cloud of toxic gas or something.
Okay, I get it. What about missile strikes? Any tips beyond duck and cover?
Well, they do suggest finding a sturdy building or an underground facility.
Okay, that's pretty standard advice.
Or, and I'm not making this up, a really big rock.
A rock. Like Dwayne Johnson big or just a regular rock?
They don't specify the size, but they do tell a story about a man who survived Hiroshima because a mountain shielded him.
Wow, okay. So nature's bunker.
I guess so.
Interesting. All right, so we've got hermit mode for small attacks and rock hugging for missiles. What about the main course? Ground invasion.
For that, they're pretty straightforward. Run away from the enemy.
Makes sense.
Avoid airports.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be stuck in an airport during a war.
Right, so it's all about the strategic retreat.
Okay, I like it. What's for dessert on this apocalypse menu? Air raids.
Yep, air raids. Basements are always a good bet. Classic. But they also suggest that Kyoto might be relatively safe.
Kyoto? Why Kyoto?
Because of all the UNESCO World Heritage sites there.
Wait, they're banking on the enemy having good taste in architecture.
It sounds crazy, right?
Totally.
But they figure attacking those sites would be a global no-no, so maybe the enemy will think twice.
Yay. Right, it's worth a shot, I guess. Okay, so appetizers, main course, dessert. What's left? The after-dinner mint.
Ah, yes, the after-dinner mint. Nuclear, biological, or chemical attacks.
And I'm guessing this is where year's supply of toilet paper comes in.
You got it. But we'll save the joys of subterranean sanitation for the next segment.
Okay, you've officially piqued my curiosity. We'll have to delve into that after the break. All right, back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
And we're now at the part where things get a little, well, intense.
Yeah, we're entering the hold on to your hats zone of the Japanese war survival guide.
Right, we left off talking about nuclear, biological, chemical attack.
Big stuff.
Exactly. And this guide doesn't sugarcoat anything. It goes into detail about the initial blast, the fallout, the long-term effects.
But pretty graphic.
It's like they want to make sure you're really, really scared.
Well, they are trying to prepare people for a worst-case scenario.
Okay, true. but it's still kind of terrifying. So they talk about surviving one bomb, but what about, like, multiple?
Right. They actually explain the concept of a nuclear chain reaction.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one detonation triggering others.
So it's not just one mushroom cloud, it's like a whole buffet of them.
Pretty much. And that leads to even bigger questions, right? Like what happens to society? How do you even rebuild after something like that?
It's almost too much to think about.
It is heavy stuff. But this guide, it makes you confront those possibilities.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, you survive the initial blast and the fallout. What's next? What's life like in this post-apocalyptic world?
Well, according to the guide, the first step is staying underground for a while.
Like, how long are we talking?
It depends how close you were to the blast.
So basically become a mole person.
In a sense, yeah. And they also stress the importance of uncontaminated water, basic sanitation, and of course those supplies we talked about.
Including the year's worth of toilet paper.
You bet.
Okay, I'm still out over that one. But what about more serious stuff? Like medical care or communication? How do you even start rebuilding?
The guide talks about the importance of community and cooperation, setting up basic communication systems, sharing resources, working together to meet basic needs.
It's like starting civilization from scratch.
Right. But with the added challenges of radiation and potential environmental damage.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. I'm guessing disease outbreaks are a major concern too.
Definitely. They emphasize hygiene and sanitation to prevent that.
So it's a whole new set of challenges, even after surviving the initial attack.
Exactly. It really drives home the point that nuclear war isn't just a one-time event. It's a whole cascade of consequences that could last for generations.
Okay, I need a moment to process all this. Is there anything else in this guide, or is this the end of our descent into nuclear anxiety?
Well, there's one last point. It's a bit, I guess you could call it darkly humorous.
Okay, bring on the humor.
Yeah.
I need a laugh after all this apocalyptic talk.
Well, according to the guide, if nuclear war does happen, your best bet might be living in a country that doesn't have nuclear weapons.
Like, seriously, that's their advice.
Basically, yeah. The logic is nuclear-armed countries are the most likely targets.
So just hope your country isn't important enough to get nuked.
It sounds crazy, I know.
It does, but I guess in a way it makes sense.
It's a twisted kind of logic for sure.
All right, that's a lot to take in. I think we need to come up for air and process all this in our final segment. Okay, so we've explored the depths of the Japanese War Survival Guide.
And what a journey it's been.
Seriously, from hermit mode to rock hugging to the strategic advantages of toilet paper hoarding.
They really covered all the bases.
It's a wild mix of practical advice, paranoia, and, a little bit of dark humor sprinkled in.
Yeah, it's definitely not your average government publication.
But beyond the weirdness, it kind of makes you think, right? Like, about the possibility of conflict and what we would do if things went really wrong.
It forces you to confront some uncomfortable truths.
Definitely. But I also think there's something empowering about being prepared, even just mentally.
I agree. It's about taking control of your own response, even when everything else feels chaotic.
Right. Because you can't control everything, but you can control how you react.
Exactly. And that sense of agency can make a big difference.
So should we all be building bunkers in our backyards now?
I wouldn't go that far. But we can all take steps to be more informed and more resilient.
Like what?
Well, we can educate ourselves about potential threats. We can support organizations working for peace.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we can have open conversations about these issues with our friends and family.
Because ultimately the best way to survive a war is to prevent it.
Absolutely. And that takes a collective effort, a commitment to understanding and cooperation.
Well said. So there you have it, folks. Our deep dive into the world of Japanese civilian war survival advice.
A world filled with toilet paper, sturdy rocks, and a whole lot of food for thought.
It's been a strange, insightful, and hopefully memorable journey. And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Stay curious, stay safe, and until next time, remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to surviving the apocalypse.